Please be seated.
Mr. Zivanovic, do you wish to cross-examine the witness?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. What happened here? Who switched this off? Madam Nikolic, do you wish to cross-examine the witness?
No, thank you, Your Honor. No questions for this witness.
Mr. Lazarevic has already indicated that there is no cross. Correct? Ms. Favot?
No questions, Your Honor.
No questions from the Military Defense Team. We are not aware if you would like to cross-examine the witness.
Well, I was about to apologise for the fact that we hadn't provided a filing. Apologies anyway. It won't surprise the trial chambers to know we have absolutely no questions for this witness whatsoever.
Thank you. Mr. Sarapa, would you like to cross-examine this witness? Okay. Thank you.
No, thank you.
All right. That brings us to you, Mr. Van der Puy.
Yes, Mr. President, I'll have a brief cross-examination.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon to you, sir. My name is Kwaku Vanderpool. He's not hearing? Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all.
Dobro.
Thank you, Colonel Alachov. You can hear me now, is that right? All right, good afternoon to you.
Da.
My name is Kwaku Vanderpool, and on behalf of the prosecution, I'm going to put some questions to you in relation to your direct examination. Now,
Izvolite.
Please go ahead.
okay, now, the very last thing that you spoke about before we broke about a half an hour ago is you indicated that you were not aware of any particular event in which Mr. Beara had offended anybody or paid any particular attention to a person's ethnic background. You remember that testimony?
Da.
Yes, I do.
Sir, are you familiar with the term Turk? As is used to describe a Bosnian Muslim?
To sam ja čuo da
I heard of such a term. Do you mean when used in a derogatory fashion? Well, I never heard that word from Captain Beara. At least I was never present on such occasions.
What about the term Balia? Have you heard that term?
sam čuo sam za
I did hear about that term.
Okay. And is that a derogatory term as well?
to. Jest.
Yes, it is.
In fact, it's an extremely offensive and demeaning term, isn't it?
Zavisi ko kako.
Well, depends on one's understanding and depending on what occasion it is used. There are different offensive words, in particular in the Serbian language, which can have a particular weight given the context or the situation in which they're used.
All right. Is that the kind of language that you would expect a high-ranking officer in the Army to use?
Ako se radi o
If it is an official communication, in that case, it would be inappropriate. If, on the other hand, if we have two people speaking in jest or in their unofficial capacity, then it could take place, especially among those of us who hail from the south. One could then hear terms of such nature.
Well, have you ever heard Mr. Beara use those terms?
ja nisam bio prisutan.
I was never present on such an occasion, and I don't remember him using such terms.
Moguće i ja da kažem.
Maybe even I used some terms in different situations, but
All right, well, let me acquaint you with a document that's a 65 Ter 539. Now, this is a document, as you can see from the bottom, that is type-signed Lubisha Beara. It's dated 16th August 1995. And this is a communication. It says Supreme Military Court. It has a strictly confidential number 15/95. And you can see right there, right in the first line, where Mr. Beara is referring to all the POWs from the former Balia enclave of Jepa. Do you see that, sir?
Da?
yes, I do.
And if you go on a little bit further on in the document, you can see right after there's a reference to the members of the VRS. In the next line, it says that members of the VRS and RS, Republika Srpska MUP, and the security organs who will interrogate the captured Balja in order to provide criminal justice documentation. You see that? That's right there in the second line of the second paragraph.
Dobro, nije ni bitno, ne vidim.
I can't see it very well, but I'll take your word for it. I trust that what you read is correct.
All right.
All right.
Let me take you down to the third paragraph. And if you look at the last sentence of that, you can see where it says to do this, 2 investigating judges with typists and deputy prosecutors should be sent to the Srbije Correctional Facility so that the criminal law documentation can be formed immediately after the interrogation of the Balje. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
In relation to one of the last questions that was put to you, you also indicated that when it came to making appointments, that all Mr. Beara was concerned about was the qualifications and the quality of the work of the people that he was selecting. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do. I remember.
Right? Let me acquaint you with another document. Could I have 65 Ter 3502 in E-Court, please? All right. We don't have the English. Yeah, we do have the English. Okay. This is a document. If we can go to the second page just for a moment so I can show the gentleman that this is a document that is signed by. Do you see that it's signed by Popović Beara?
Da.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, this is a document that is dated 27th November 1995. It has a number, strictly confidential number of 12/46-701/95. And what it talks about is choosing a number of NCOs and soldiers from the military police battalion as a personal escort for members of the main staff. Now, if you go, if we could, if we could go to the bottom of this page in the BCS, okay. And if we can go to the second page of the English. In the second paragraph of the English, it reads, "The NCOs and soldiers appointed for escort duty should excel in military conduct and appearance, as well as in military knowledge and well-mannered behavior and similar. They may only be Serbs and not those from mixed marriages or those whose family members live in the territory controlled by the enemy." These are among the criteria that Mr. Beara has specified are to be found or to be observed in filling this position. This relates to more than just whether or not a person is qualified, doesn't it, sir?
Da.
Yes, that is correct. Factually speaking, and that's what it says. However, we seem to be forgetting one fact, and that is that in the period that I talked about, while the unified Yugoslavia was still in existence, that at that time there was still the Army of Yugoslavia that existed. However, this period is in 1995 already, when the opposing parties were Serbs and Muslims, Bosniaks. To me, it seems normal that when choosing the candidates for a post like that, one bears in mind certain things. This should not be insulting to anyone. The fact that I, as a Macedonian, or another person who is a Bosniak would not be considered. The conditions were different. The situation was different from that when we were still together. I talked about the period before June 1992. After that, we went our separate ways.
All right, I think you actually said in your testimony that you never parted ways, even though physically you parted. And what I'd like to know is whether or not, in your view, the words that are written here reflect somebody's or a person's paying attention to a person's ethnicity above all in relation to filling a qualified position.
Pa ja mislim da se vodi
I think that what they had in mind was to choose the persons who would fully implement the tasks they were assigned, much as you would choose your work team. On top of their abilities, you also consider who and what they are. By the same token, the other side also has the right to choose the people who are going to be assigned certain tasks. To my mind, this is no insult or a disadvantage that someone may not be considered for a certain position. I should not be offended if I am not appointed as your assistant because I was not qualified. And in this particular consideration, other circumstances played a role too.
And that qualification can just depend on who it is you happen to have married before the conflict, in your view. That's right, Mr. Alachov, isn't it? One of the criteria you see in here says, not those from mixed marriages. That's justifiable in your view, right, Mr. Alachov?
pa čujte,
Well, the situation evidently showed that in the course of the breaking up of Yugoslavia, that some people who hailed from mixed marriages fell under the influence of their wives and other members of their family. They left the armed forces and they abandoned the service which they had sworn to protect, saying that they would conscientiously perform their tasks. Instead, they were under the influence of their family members, leaving the armed forces at the very moment when they were needed the most. That was the starting point, as well as based on the experience of others. This is normal when electing persons to sensitive positions. This also had to be borne in mind. As far as I know, this is something you find in each and every army of the world. Some people cannot be trusted with certain functions if they don't meet the other criteria. There is also a categorization of officers in terms of category 1, 2, and 3, and you know exactly to what level a certain officer can advance. It is not my fault that I would, for example, fall in category 3. I shouldn't be angry by that, because of that. And as far as I know, such categories exist in foreign armies as well.
Okay. Well, what category would somebody like General Milicic fall into?
ne znam ja, koji
I don't know.
I object, I object. I really don't see the purpose of this question. This is a witness testifying to the character of another person. He didn't talk about the Army of Republika Srpska. We don't even know if he knows General Milicic. Maybe it would be good to start, for a start, to know whether he knows General Milicic.
Thank you, Ms. Favreau.
I think he's answered the question. I have no further questions,
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Is there re-examination, Mr. Nikolic? Yes, please go
Da,
ahead.
časni sude.
Yes, Your Honor. Briefly. Mr. Alachov, during your military service, were you a member of the League of Communists of Yugoslavia? Answer, yes, I was. Question. Was one of the criteria to be accepted for military service and to obtain senior military positions, was the membership in the League a precondition? Answer. Well, there were some army members who were not members of the party, but they were not assigned leading positions. Question. You told that during the time you talked about, your command and the armed forces reflected the multi-ethnic composition of the then state. My question is this. Was one of the criteria used to elect people to the senior positions in the army the ethnic key, that is to say that they hailed from a particular ethnic group which was represented the most in their given area?
U početku moje
Answer. At the beginning of my military career, there was a principle in place that to the extent possible, especially in managing positions, there should be a proportionate representation of people of different ethnic backgrounds. However, later on, the principle was liberalized, relaxed, and especially for those other duties, the practice was to employ people who hailed from the area where the garrison was. However, for the senior positions, the ethnic key was still used so that there wouldn't be people of a single ethnicity occupying most of the senior positions.
Gospodine Alačev,
Question, Mr. Alachev. Former Yugoslavia fell apart, and for the most part, national states were created. What is your opinion? Would it have been possible and logical in an elite unit, such as we could see from the document supposed to provide security for the most senior officials, to be elected into it if one were, say, a Serb coming from a mixed marriage living in Croatia?
Question, yes, Mr. Van der Puy.
I see that the question invites speculation in this respect. The witness is not testifying as an expert, and the questions I put to him related to the specific document that was presented to him.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why and when you stood up because to object, because that was after the use by the by counsel of what is your opinion. However, later on, actually, he is asking a very specific question which can be answered by the witness based on his expertise. But still, I don't blame you for standing up at the time. Yes, Colonel Alachov, could you answer the question, please? It's a very simple one. Would it have been possible and logical in an elite unit such as we could see from the document supposed to provide security for the most senior officials to be elected into it if one were, say, a Serb coming from a mixed marriage living in Croatia? What is not clear in my mind exactly is what period and time are you referring the witness to? Is it before Yugoslavia fell apart or when the war was on?
časni sude.
Your Honor, I had in mind the post-war period. In my previous question, I said that several nation states were formed, and my question pertained to the period after the war.
Right. The period during, period after the war, or during the war.
Ili jedno ili drugo.
Either way, during the war or after 1996.
Okay, then you can split your answer into two parts: during the war and after the war. If you can answer the question. If you are not in a position to answer the question, please tell us so, and we'll move to the next one.
Pokušat ću da odgovorim.
I will try to answer. At the outset, I have to say that in any event or in any rule, there are exceptions. If there is information in existence about someone that person is loyal and that accepts the basic ideology or position, then that person is included in such a unit. However, we have exceptions, but rules are not based on those. In the Serbian army today, there are Serbs, members of the army, who hail from Croatia or Republika Srpska, that is Bosnia and Herzegovina. As to whether they occupy senior positions or not, I have no knowledge of it. Well, there may be some in senior positions, but what do you define? How do you define a senior position? The chief of staff of the general staff, or, as far as I know, the person occupying that position currently hails from Knin.
Ne znam da li sam odgovorio.
I don't know whether I've answered the question. Mr. Alacho, there were two questions. Please pay a bit more attention to what I'm about to say now. Based on everything we've said so far, was it possible in the course of the war, in an elite unit in Croatia, that a person be appointed into that unit assigned to provide security for senior officials, and provided that person was of Serbian origin? And the second question is whether something like that would be possible in the newly formed states after the war. Answer: to repeat what I've said, there are exceptions to any rule. In the course of the war, or a war, it is difficult to get by information on people's affiliation. People often find themselves in such fluctuating situations, and one changes affiliation and behavior frequently. There are those who represent a position today, changing it the very next day. If someone falls under the influence of another, they can change their views, causing more damage than good. During the combat operations in Croatia, there were members of other ethnicities in senior positions as well. There was an Albanian who commanded a brigade. Well, he's one of the accused before this tribunal, Mr. Ademi.
Hvala, gospodine.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Alachov. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Judge 1, do you have any questions? Judge Post, Judge Stoll. We don't have any further questions for you, Colonel, which means you're free to go. Our staff will give you all the assistance you require. On behalf of everyone, I would like to thank you for having come over, and also wish you a safe journey back home.
Hvala.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everyone who was of assistance.
Documents, Mr. Nikolic.
Časni student,
Your Honor, no documents to tender.
Mr. Van der Puy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 65 Tur 539
Yeah.
and 65 Tur 350.
3502. Yeah. Any objections, Mr. Nikolic?
da prigovaramo za
We object to the 1996 document because it is outside the scope of the indictment.
Do you wish to respond to that, Mr. Van der Puy?
The documents I showed to the witness, Mr. President, were 1995 documents. Both of them were.
Yeah, that's what I think, but I'm not here to argue the issue, the point. Yes.
očigledno da sam ja onda
Evidently, I overlooked the date. Thank you.
So it means that you have no objection, basically. All right. Thank you. So they are both admitted. Which brings us to the next witness. Is he here? Oh, one moment. Yes, Madame Favreau.
Your Honor, before hearing the testimony of the next witness, so that we aren't faced with any surprises, I would like to ask you for supplementary guidelines on the cross-examination led by the prosecution, because if the prosecution is allowed to ask questions that have nothing to do with the examination in chief and to mention an accused that is not at all prepared, this is not fair to the defense. I'm not asking you to completely forbid such questions, but in such a case, the prosecution should be obliged to inform the defense counsels of the other accused who might be mentioned in the cross-examination so we can prepare adequately.
I can see your point, of course, and I appreciate it. But on the other hand, the cross-examination is what it is, and most of the time one doesn't anticipate or can't anticipate much. One question follows another. Sometimes the next question was never intended and is put precisely because of the answer to the previous question. So I remember when I used to cross-examine myself. Sometimes I would just scrap all the papers and everything that I would have prepared, finding myself faced with new facts. Yes.
Your Honor, I fully agree with you. Nonetheless, I find that the question regarding my client that was addressed to the witness was just completely out of the context of the cross-examination and had nothing to do with what the witness had said, could not at all have been deduced or derived from the answers of that witness.
Anyway, yes, Mr. Van der Puy, do you wish to comment on that?
If you'd like me to, I will. I
Very
think
briefly, please.
it was directly related to the answer that the witness gave. The witness precisely responded to the question of considering one's ethnicity in terms of the advancement or the possibilities that are available to a person coming from a mixed marriage, and that is precisely the reason why the question was put to the witness, and it is also exemplary, I think, of the credibility of the witness in terms of his assessment of the significance of that material.
You both, I'm sure that in the future, if there are cases which are justify attracting such questions or problems, we will deal with them as they arise. Ms. Favreau.
Monsieur le Président. Your Honor, but that's exactly my point of view. I think that, in fact, now we're in a situation that is not at all fair to the witness. He answered a precise question. He said, I don't know. We have no idea whether this witness ever heard of General Miletić, if he knows what were his functions within the army of the Republika Srpska. We do not know if he knows that General Miletić is married to a Croatian woman. We have no idea of any of that. And we know that the witness does not know to which category General Miletić belongs. So I don't at all see how we can assess such evidence in the context or given all that we do not know.
Yes, thank you, Madame Favot, but I don't think we need to discuss it any further. Where's the new witness?
10 minutes.
Do you want to start or not? Yes, Mr. Van der Poel. All right, okay.
Časni sude, naš je svjedok.
Your Honor, we will call the next witness. I will have more time than is left today, so if Your Honors feel it best, we can start tomorrow morning. If, however, you wish us to start now, we are ready.
Let's start with the preliminaries. At least we'll clear those up. We'll clear those up, and then we can continue tomorrow. All right? If my colleagues are in agreement. Okay? So now I cancel this. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
And I welcome you to this tribunal and to this case in particular, where you are one of the witnesses summoned by the defense team for Ljubisha Beara. You're about to start giving evidence now. We've only got 10 minutes left, and then we'll continue tomorrow. Before you start testifying, you're required by our rules to make a solemn declaration that in the course of your testimony you'll be testifying the truth. The text is going to be handed to you now. Please read it out aloud, and that it will be your commitment with us.
I solemnly declare that I will speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I thank you. Please make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
Since you were a judge in your career, you are perfectly aware what the procedure is likely to be here. The Beara defense team who've summoned you as the witness will go first in a direct examination of you, and they will then be followed by cross-examination from the prosecution and possibly other defense teams later on. Who is Mr. Nikolic? We finish at 1:45, please.
Hvala, časni sude.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Dobar dan, gospodine Mediću.
Good afternoon, Mr. Medic. Answer, good afternoon. Although we have been introduced, I will introduce myself officially now for the record. My name is Predrag Nikolic. I'm an attorney at law in the defense team of Ljubisha Beara. Before you start answering my questions, we will have to agree on some technical matters. As we speak to each other in the Serbian language, the interpreters will need time to interpret all of this to the other participants in the courtroom. That's why I will ask you to always pause between question and answer. There is an error in the transcript, page 75, line 21. It says Mr. Remetic. However, this gentleman is Mr. Medic. Mr. Remetic will arrive later.
Pointing that out, Mr. Nikolic, the correction will be effected in due course. Thank you.
Hvala. Gospodine,
Thank you, Mr. Medic. I will ask you now to introduce yourself to us. Tell us your first and last name and your place and date of birth. Answer, my name is Vojislav Medic. I was born on the 1st of October 1956 in the village of Garnja Suvaja, Donji Lapat municipality. Now it is Gračac municipality in the Republic of Croatia.
koje ste škole?
A question. What is your education? Answer, I completed primary school, secondary military school, and the Faculty of Law at university.
Je li bilo nekih
Question. Did you have any specialist education or training? Answer. Yes. After secondary school, I completed a course in radio telegraphy, and I sailed on submarines as a radio telegraph operator. Question. Thank you. And where have you worked as a lawyer? Answer. After graduating from university in 1982, I was transferred to the military court in Ljubljana, where I was an intern for 2 years. After that, in 1984, I was appointed an associate in the Supreme Military Court in Belgrade.
Ako sam pravilno shvatio,
Question. If I understand you correctly, you volunteered to join the military legal service. Answer. Yes. After graduating from law school, I asked to be moved there. Answer. What kind of work did you do? Did you deal with civil law or something else while you were in the army? Answer. In the military, in the Supreme Military Court, I was an associate in the crime department. In 1987, I was appointed an investigating judge in the investigating court in Belgrade, military court, and I dealt only with criminal law.
jeste li cijeli ovaj period
A question. And throughout this period until the outbreak of the war, were you an investigating judge? Answer. Not throughout this period. I was an investigating judge from 1987 to 1993, if I remember correctly, and then I was the presiding judge of a chamber sitting in criminal cases until 1995.
Ja ću vas zamoliti
Question. I'll ask you to explain to us the organization of the military courts in the period immediately preceding the outbreak of war, that is up to 1992. Answer. If you're referring to the territorial organization, there were military courts attached to every military district. They used to be called armies, so every army had its own military court, and there was also a prosecutor's office, and then there was the Supreme Military Court in Belgrade. Question. Can you recall the names of these military courts and their headquarters, their seats, the first instance military courts, that is? Question. Certainly. There was a military court in Belgrade for the 1st Army District, one in Ljubljana, I think it was the 9th Army, one in Zagreb for the 2nd Army, one in Split for the Military Naval District, one in Sarajevo, I think it was the 7th Army, there was one in Skopje, and I don't know what the number of that army was, and there was a military court in Niš. Question. This organization of courts, was it changed, and to what extent was it changed when Yugoslavia fell apart and when in 1992 the FRY was established? Can you explain the territorial organization of the courts in the FRY as it was in 1992? Answer. I think that in 1991 or in 1992, I'm not exactly sure now, after the withdrawal of the army from Slovenia, the role of that court ceased to exist. There was a military court in Zagreb, but when war broke out, the military court from Split was relocated to Tivat in Montenegro. The other courts continued working in that period. Question, Your Honors, if we could now finish for the day, because I've rounded off this topic and I intend to start a new one tomorrow.
Thank you. We'll continue tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Bye-bye.
All right. Vous voulez